data, we find valid instruments. That's the key. Not instruments, valid instruments. We estimated these highly refined time of day preferences, and we developed a framework right now we're working on to basically extend our analysis to look at online search and purchase behavior. I'm very grateful to ARC for providing the ticket data. GEE is the company that provided me with the schedule data. And then I just really, none of this would be possible without the great team of students and researchers I've been working with. Virginia Loken, who is a Ph.D. student, won a Best Presentation Prize at Aggie Force, which is an airline organization for this. And she's up as a finalist in the Informed Aviation Dissertation Prize. So I'm very proud of her. And then Jeff just won the Most Innovation Presentation Prize at Aggie Force for his freeware software. So again, never quite know where the research is going to go, but I'm very proud of the team. Okay, any questions?
We have time for a couple of questions. I do have one here. When you're looking at these itineraries, is it airport to airport or is it market to market that you're really looking at?
So within the industry, there is usually a mapping of the airports within a city. So for instance, New York City, you can define your itinerary set to include LaGuardia, JFK, and New York. And so standard definitions are typically used to associate the airports with the city. So I would argue our itineraries, as we define them, are from city to city. You could also look at it airport to airport, but city to city seems to make more sense.
Well, and to follow up on that, I'm kind of curious because you're going to say the DC market, your selection or preference for Reagan is also work along with the freeware jets. You're not going to get the wide body and Reagan.
Right. So when we look at the estimation, so there is a correlation that happens in some of the markets. When we do the estimation, we have not typically seen that level of correlation because what we end up doing is we put all of the same OD pairs together for one of those market segmentations. So we're including all of the markets in the, like Atlanta, DC, that would be all of the markets that are within, let's say, 600 miles that are in the same time zone. So we get the variation in the equipment type and airport by basically how we define our market segment, which allows us to have some overlaps.
Any other questions?
Do you have any plans for controlling for the extreme bias that's present in the mechanical turk sample?
Yeah, so one of the things that I find fascinating about that is, extreme bias that's present. Well, okay, first of all, we've got to quantify it. Right? And one of the things I find interesting is that if you read a lot of the publications that are coming out of the business school, they're finding that there is not an extreme bias in Amazon Mechanical Turk. If I talk to individuals from LMI, which is a firm in DC that does a lot of survey work for the government, they have done profiles of people on their surveys versus the general population, and they're not seeing differences. I don't believe it, right? I'm sitting here and I don't believe it. So I can't go out and do a traditional survey with them, but what I can do is I can I can basically look at a survey that's been done for Resource Systems Group, estimate a model there, look at the profile, and then do the same thing on Amazon Mechanical Turk to see if there's a bias. But I will say that I'm with you. It's like, no offense, but you're like, the extreme bias is out there. I haven't seen that in the literature, and I don't believe it when I read it. I can't believe that these individuals are not different, just based on what they're willing to work for.
Right. I guess it would depend on the type of survey as well, right? So like your population distribution that you're looking for example.
So air travelers, yeah.
Exactly.
But even then, even if it's on the respondent, what we're going to see is we're going to see younger folks. We're going to see lower income folks.
Less business travelers.
And less business travelers. So this might be representative of the leisure market. I'm unclear if we're going to see more men or women on this. Typically, we see more women respond to surveys than men. On Amazon Mechanical Turk, I'm not quite sure if we're going to see that. But yeah, those will be the results in the spring. So we're literally generating the results now coming in. The other thing on Amazon Mechanical Turk is they have these like super workers. There's a name for them, I don't remember. But they basically have a hit rate or they get paid more than 90%. So it's basically Amazon Mechanical Turk has the good workers and the uncertified workers. So the other thing we're doing is we're we're going to compare results between the two groups to see if it's worth paying more to get the certified workers, or if they're different than the uncertified workers. Yeah, lots of open questions there.
I've been curious about what effect ultra-low cost carriers like Spirit, Frontier have affected the big carriers in terms of price or
Sure. So we
elasticity.
have some Delta folks here that might be willing to answer that. So that question. So clearly there is increased competition on the ultra-low cost like Spirit and Nav. Taking a step back, what did I say that these models were used for by the industry? Are they used to figure out what I want to price my itineraries tomorrow, or are they used to figure out how many aircraft I will purchase? Okay, so these models are more strategic in nature, so I can argue that a lot of those detailed effects of what's happening on price on a day-to-day basis, while important, are not going to be as critical in influencing the decision of code shares, these longer-term strategic issues. If I'm talking revenue management, then yes, it's definitely a challenge. If I'm talking online prices I'm going to show, then yes. The other thing about the ultra-low cost is that they are a small percentage of the market. So they come in, they're probably hitting a few markets, but comprehensively, not as much. And the other thing is that, again, I think it's important to remember that we in transportation, when we think service, our roads are fixed, right? Our cities are fixed. Our trains are fixed. Are aircraft fixed? Can you have a number of aircraft, but can you move them to different origin destination pairs? If you get an ultra-low cost carrier come in and your market goes non-profitable, you have the ability to switch your capacity and equipment. So I would argue the airline industry has more ability to respond, let's say, to market changes than we typically see in rail. In anything that's these fixed locations. Hotels is another classic example. Hotels have a very different profile than airlines because your inventory is fixed. It's in one spot.
Are there any issues incorporating subsidized airlines?
Subsidized airlines, define?
So like airlines that receive compensation from certain different countries to provide route destination funds.
Right. So we only looked at continental U.S. markets here, so that's not as much an issue. If you have airlines that are subsidized on the price, this does not have the cost factored in. How it's going to pop up is that their average fare is going to be less. So it'll appear in the model in terms of two factors. One is the average fare will be less. The second is on the instruments, the capacity is going to be flooded. In the market, usually the load factors are lower when you have subsidies going on. So I would think that my instruments might need to change, or I might need to make them specific to any fare. So those are two parts of the model. But I think the framework to do it would be the same. It's just prices are lower, capacities higher.
You restricted the data set to domestic flights. Could you use the same techniques internationally? Why was that done?
You can. ARC, there are two companies that basically are these ticketing clearinghouses. The Airlines Reporting Corporation is for the U.S. About 95% of its data is domestic U.S., 5% international. The billing settlement plan that's located in the UK tends to have the rest of the world. So there's discussions to combine it. We actually had both data sets. ARC is undertaking a sort of data sharing agreement right now, but it's in the early works, and the data we would still be estimating would be done. So definitely a possibility, not something I think I'm undertaking soon.
Any other questions? If not, we thank you. Be sure to sign up, and we'll be having our next seminar.
So the problem with that